Every part of your perfect body whispers temptation. It's as if the gods made you just to ruin me.
I've drunk wines from Daggerford to Cormier, but I've never known a taste as rich as yours.
Why, hello, lover. That sounded more debonair in my head, I'll admit. Do you need something?
Hey guys, it's DBD Gamer Girl here. Welcome back to my channel. So I posted a couple days ago a video about coming back to YouTube and why I had taken such a long break basically, and what kind of content you can expect from me going forward. So definitely go check that out in case you missed that and are interested. And after that video, I posted a little community poll to see what games you guys are interested in apart from DBD, and Baldur's Gate 3 won, which is actually amazing for me because I have been obsessed with Baldur's Gate 3 since around August of 2023. I have been playing that game for so long now, like I have almost 1,000 hours in this game, and I've done so many playthroughs I lost count. I've played solo, I've played with other people, I've done honor mode twice, I have it on multiple platforms. Like, I'm so obsessed with this game and I love it so much. So I thought it would be fun to do a little tier list of the romances in this game, because at this point I've either personally romanced or seen somebody else romance like every character in this game. So let's start with Wyll, okay? Wyll is actually the perfect fairy tale romance. Like, if you think of Disney prince, Wyll definitely fits the bill. And I think he's really sweet, and he actually is very poetic. His dialogue is freaking amazing. He says stuff like, you know, you're the sunrise and I want to grow old with you and I believe in happily ever afters. Like, he's legitimately fairy tale dream guy. The only problem with Wyll is that his content is just severely lacking compared to the other characters. I feel like Wyll is super underdeveloped almost, like as a romance, like by the devs. I'm not really quite sure why. Like, for example, when you approach people in camp, as your romance progresses with them, their greetings for you get kind of cuter and cuter. Like, Astarion might start with, oh, what can I do for you type thing, but by the time that, you know, you're in a relationship with him, he'll be like, hello beautiful, like when he greets you. Whereas Wyll, for some reason, the entire time he says well met.
Hello, beautiful.
Well met.
I think they changed that recently. I can't forget the new thing he says, but honestly it sounds even worse. So I don't know why they did Wyll so dirty. But anyways, I'm gonna put Wyll in fairy tale romance because even though he is missing content compared to the other characters, he has some really cute scenes. Like, he has a scene where you dance with him. He has a scene where he proposes to you with an acorn and says he wants to be with you forever. Like, that's probably my favorite scene with him, and it's really cute. And he's one of the most, like, morally solid, like, characters, I would say. Some people think he's a little too goody two-shoes and, like, egotistical because of that. But, I mean, overall, I think he's a really great guy, and his romance is really sweet. Okay, now for Astarion. I know there's like a little bit of two different versions for his romance depending on whether you ascend him or not. Generally, I never ascend him because I kind of like his sweeter, softer romance side. And just, I feel like for his character development and his story, just not ascending him honestly makes the most sense, and it's like the most morally, like, correct thing to do. I know, like, people on TikTok at least, like, they seem to get so pissed off if you say that you ascended Astarion, which I don't really understand because it's a game. Like, I mean, obviously you're gonna try all the different things. Like, I have ascended him in certain playthroughs to see how it is. Like, and I mean, I don't think that's, you know, the perfect ending for his story, but like, you're not a bad person for ascending him in one of your playthroughs. Anyways, that being said, Astarion's romance is very deep and complex, I feel like, because he starts off almost using you because he kind of wants, he sees you as a way to get to Cazador, and he obviously wants to get his revenge on Cazador, and he's kind of like using you for that because he knows how tempting he is. He is used to convincing people to do things or manipulating people through sex. I mean, he's just kind of unfortunately been forced to do that for all of his life, so he almost sees you like in that light in the beginning. But as you go through the story and as his character development grows further and he sees like how that you actually care for him and you let him be his own independent being and you're not owning him or controlling him, his character really evolves to the point where he kind of recognizes that you actually care for him. And even though initially he doesn't really want to put a label on it, he does acknowledge that you're the first person that he's ever truly cared for. And by the end of the game, I mean, if you don't ascend him, he does like actually acknowledge that he loves you and that he wants to spend his life with you, and how he's putting his old life behind him and basically starting over because he breaks the cycle with Cazador and doesn't ascend. If you do ascend him, then he kind of gets stuck in this vicious cycle where, you know, he goes from being abused to almost the abuser, essentially. And I feel like in his romance after that, it makes it very clear that he doesn't actually respect you anymore, and he kind of sees you as lesser than. Like, all his romance scenes after that are very aggressive, and they just kind of convey that he wants you to obey him. And I mean, there is, you know, inherently an appeal to that darker side of the romance as well, which I can totally understand. But character-wise, it's definitely not a good choice for him because he kind of stays stuck in the Cazador abuse cycle, essentially, and he becomes like the new Cazador. When he does have the soft romance side and he's very vulnerable with you, I think that's such a like full circle, like perfect story that I'm gonna put him in I'm Obsessed, because he has so many major cutscenes and he just is night and day, like from the beginning to the end of the game, which is amazing. Okay, Halsin. The bear. I feel like it's so funny because like one of the first trailers they had put out about this game was like the bear romance scene, which is Halsin, which is so funny because it's like one of the crazier things in the game. In terms of Halsin, I don't really know how I feel about him, because in terms of his dialogue and his mannerisms, I feel like he's very sweet. He says a lot of like really cutesy things. Like, for example, he'll say nature has outdone itself with you and stuff like that. It's very sweet. But because he's so big into just nature and natural order of things, he's polyamorous, and he will basically share you with anybody, and he doesn't want to commit. He's a little bit of a floater, and that's one of the things that's actually really bothered me about Halsin, I would say. I don't know, I guess that's not, there's nothing wrong with that, I mean, but it's just not my personal preference. I think it's interesting that he says that he doesn't want to keep your presence to himself, and he wants to share it with others because you're so amazing, basically. I mean, that's cute in a way. And there are some really sweet things that he says at the end of the game. But Halsin's kind of a tough one. I think I'm going to put him in mid. I think they've changed him a little bit recently, but like for most of the time I romanced Halsin, I didn't really get any like closure with him. It was just kind of like he says he cares about you a lot, but he wants to kind of go off and do his own thing at the end of the game. But overall, he's polyamorous, and his romance is more limited because you really only get one cutscene with him in Act 2, which is the bear one. And I think because he's polyamorous and not really a main focus, you don't really get much character development. I mean, generally his character stays the same throughout the story. So Gale. Gale is also a pretty intense one. It's so funny for me with Gale because initially I actually used to hate Gale. I thought he was so annoying. I hated his voice. I hated how he needed magic items to survive. He was always yapping and I was just like, I'm so tired of this guy. But then once I gave him a chance, like it's literally like the Astarion to Gale pipeline or something, I was like, this guy is actually really, really cool and his romance is really, really intense. Gale's story is quite complicated because initially, before I really understood the depth of his story, I was annoyed that he was always talking about Mystra, the goddess that he used to be in a relationship with. It felt like he was always talking about and comparing me to his ex, and I was getting really frustrated with that. But as you kind of get deeper into the game and you understand more about the lore of the characters, you can see that Mystra kind of had a hold on him since he was really, really young. So he was kind of misled into thinking that he was very special to her, I feel like, and she was just manipulating him. And that's kind of the reason why he has had such a hard time letting Mystra go. But the fact that he does tell you so many times, like, being with you makes me forget my goddess. Things that he says that are like that make you realize that he does have a lot of character development as the romance progresses. And particularly in the case where he does not take the crown of Karsus for himself and he chooses to just, you know, like, be with you and be himself. I love that ending for him because it's kind of like he completely lets go of that connection to an obsession with Mystra for you. He has all this internal conflict about whether he should kill himself like Mystra asks him to defeat the Absolute. But, you know, you're able to kind of show him that you care about him and that you want him around and you're gonna find another way to deal with the Absolute. I do love that progression, and I love how much he trusts you, like, along the way, and how he slowly gets over his attachment to Mystra. And by the end, it's like you basically get married to him and you can go to Waterdeep with him, and it shows like a little glimpse of how your guys' life together is, like, through how they speak. So I think it's really sweet. I love Gale's romance. I think I'm also gonna put him under fairy tale romance. Well, I'm kind of debating whether to put him under I'm obsessed, but honestly, Astarion is just, I feel like his romance has a little bit more depth to it. I don't know, maybe I'm just biased. And I know Gale has way more content than Wyll, and I'm not saying that Wyll is objectively the same as Gale's romance, but just in my mind, I think they're both comparable. Okay, so next up is Lae'zel. I feel like I'm yapping for so long about each of these romances. So Lae'zel is actually also very deep and complex because she starts off, at least to me, as a very, very unlikable character. She's very harsh, she's very blunt, and she doesn't have much patience apart from her own mission to go to the crush, basically, and her own loyalty to Vlaakith, and she's really difficult to like in the beginning. In the beginning, she acts very basically lustful, and that she only wants you as, you know, somebody to sleep with. Like, there's no emotional attachment there, essentially, is what she claims in the beginning. But as the story progresses and as the romance progresses and you know, like, respect her quests and help her see Vlaakith's deceit, etc., she does develop an attachment to you and she starts opening up to you and she's more vulnerable. And one of the most interesting things about Lae'zel's romance is you have to duel her, and whoever loses has to tell the other one, I am yours, and she basically commits herself to you at that time. And I thought that was really interesting because there's like a, you know, dominance aspect to her romance as well. Towards the end, she confides that she wants to be with you forever, and you've really come to show her what caring for someone feels like. And she just becomes such a softie, like at the end. It's so sweet, like it's so unexpected compared to how she is initially. So I kind of love that transformation of her going from, you know, a really hard ass into soft girl. So I'm gonna put her in fairy tale romance as well. Karlach. All right, so Karlach's romance is very, what do you say? Very puppy dog-ish, golden retriever vibes. Karlach's a very happy-go-lucky character in general, and her romance is like very similar to that, honestly. So she is so excited in the initial tiefling party if you express interest in her, and she's interested in you. Like, she's really like so excited, like a little baby. And she is just like, it's like excitement and butterflies and just like whirlwind romance type of vibes is what I get from her. She's super excited to kiss you. She's like a little bit nervous, a little bit awkward, but she's also very open about her desires. Because, you know, towards the beginning half of the game, because her engine is burning too hot, you can't really touch her. So she keeps saying like how much she wants to touch you and how much she wants to like do things with you. But then later she also has like little cutesy, like nervous, awkward vibes. So she's like a little bit of both. And I love that in the end, if you are romancing her, you can basically go to Avernus with her and help her out. And she wants to be with you and she doesn't want to die. So I think I'm a little bit torn on this, but this is my tier list. And personally, I'm not a fan of Karlach's romance. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I just personally don't really like the golden retriever vibes. Like, I don't know. She's a little bit too golden retriever for me. So I'm just gonna put her in mid. I feel so bad doing this because it's not that there's a problem with the romance, but this is just my opinion. I don't know. Kind of feels like a high school romance or something to me a little bit. Okay, Shadowheart. Oh my gosh, so Shadowheart, I didn't romance her till actually pretty recently. It's funny because every guy that I ever played with romanced Shadowheart. So it was like, I guess I never really got the opportunity to romance her, but in my most recent playthrough, I did finally end up romancing her, and her romance is actually like one of my favorites because there's something, there's something so good, there's something so satisfying about how in the beginning she's very distrustful of you and she's very standoffish. My dog is like running in his sleep. She gives you the cold shoulder kind of thing and she acts very tough. But as you talk to her and you get to know her and you kind of like slowly start to win her over, like, and it feels very real as in she tells you certain things and if you remember them, she'll like that. Like, for example, like she likes night orchids and she doesn't know how to swim. And if you remember those things, she'll actually, you know, be happy that you remembered those things about her, which is so real, honestly. So I really like that about her. And she kind of like has a soft spot for you, which is honestly one of my favorite tropes in general in romance. Like someone that's kind of mean to everybody with a soft spot just for you. So I feel like Shadowheart kind of embodies that trope in a way because you're the only one that like really sees that side of her, and she kind of initiates the romance scene that you have with her where you go in the water together, even though she doesn't know how to swim. So I think it's really sweet. So I'm actually gonna put Shadowheart in I'm obsessed as well. Minthara is an interesting one because, you know, at first look, she seems definitely just morally wrong, purely evil, but it's more complicated than that. Most of the time, and most of the crazy things she's done has been under the control of the Absolute, and she recognizes the severity of what she's done, and that's one of the reasons why she wants revenge on Orin so badly, because Orin is the one who initially massacred everyone and then put Minthara under the influence of the tadpole, essentially. And one thing I've noticed about Minthara is she's just very observant about the companions, and she tries to understand them even if she doesn't necessarily relate to them. She does try to understand them, which I find interesting. And she kind of does, you know, if you romance her, she gets vulnerable about how she feels about life and the moral questionability of some of the stuff that she's done. That being said, Minthara, I would say, has, again, some of the least content in the game. I think it just needs more, especially to address the complexity of the stuff that she's gone through. She doesn't really have any cutscenes specific to her apart from the one in Act 1. The rest of it is just dialogue, and though the dialogue does, you know, show a lot about her, I feel like she needs more content to really be able to romance her through both good and evil paths and like fully understand her as a person. So I think I'm gonna just put her in Do Better. Not that this is a dig against Minthara as a character, but just I feel like her romance is not very fleshed out, and you know, just some of her arrogance and moral questionability like does make me not gravitate towards her very much personally. There are just certain things that she says and does that I have a really hard time reconciling myself with, like romancing her, because she does really she does have a lot of periods where she likes the pure evil choice. I don't know, there's a big gray area I feel like with Minthara still. I mean, take that opinion of mine with a grain of salt for sure, because I just haven't explored her character as much as some of the others. So that being said, this is my first tier list back. I know I yapped a lot and maybe some of these tiers don't really make sense, but it's just for my personal preference. I think all of the romances, all of the characters in this game are just so well done, and there's literally endless possibilities of the options and paths you can take in the game, which is what makes it so purely replayable. And I am just obsessed with it. And I mean, there are so many more Baldur's Gate tier lists I can make. Let me know if you're interested in seeing that, or if I should make tier lists for other games, or if I should just post some gameplay of games. I'm still pretty undecided on where exactly I want to go with the channel, but I'm kind of going to make it up as I go along. Also, in the comments, drop in case you have any recommendations of what I can change my channel name to, because I really just don't like DVD Gamer Girl. I don't play DVD anymore, and I feel like Gamer Girl is so cringe. So just let me know if you can think of anything. I'm probably gonna rebrand soon. Anyways, I hope you guys are having a great day, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.
I love this time of night. There's an almost reverent silence that accompanies the peak of darkness, when you'd almost believe the dawn will never break.